Why does Lakshmi sit on Nrsingadev's lap?
Oh, that's right. I knew there was a question.
Yeah, I sent that to
Maybe you
you
sent
too.
it to me through WhatsApp.
I did. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I knew there was a question I was missing. Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's some tradition like that, you know, not only with Lakshmi Devi, but you see it is a tradition of the consort, of the female consort, to sit like that on her husband's lap, on her male consort's lap. You know, I mean, I don't know if I want to analyze it too much. But we see there's some tradition. There's also one. Welcome to Rasaraj Prabhu. Very happy to have you with us. Dandavat. Recently I was telling this one history of involving Lord Shiva and Parvati. You know, there's one story, famous incident when Parvati Devi was seated on Lord Shiva's lap in an assembly of very respectable sages. And this one king, Chitraketu, he was very astonished, you know, that because it's something of an intimate, posture. And this King Chitraketu made some exclamation of surprise, and so Parvati became offended by that, and then there's a whole, story. But anyway, just as an example, we do hear there's some tradition like that, some exchange, on the male, female. But I don't know if we need to analyze it more than that. But it's not exclusively Lakshmi and the Shrinka where you'll find that, but it is more of a widespread custom. So that's all I can say. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything on that. Mm-hmm. I did have another question as well, which is kind of along these lines, which, I mean, it's related, at least in the sense of like the Shaktiman aspect of things. Let me see. I did have another question. Where is it?
While you're looking for your question, on the theme of Lakshmi Devi, what I want to maybe find out is, normally in the Hindu culture, you have Lakshmi Devi and lots of people pray to her for like material wealth. And I just want to know how, because generally in the age of Kali, we understand that Kali is hiding in like gold or money and that type of thing. So is there what type of wealth, if I ask on Lakshmi Devi, do like normally Hindus pray to, and how do I understand like Kali that hides in wealth, and then Lakshmi Devi, who is that spiritual wealth? Or
well, that's a very nice question, Seva Rupadidi. Thanks for bringing that up. And I think the way I would harmonize that is that in this age, there's more of a Bimala gave a very nice explanation of this actually a few days ago. Bimala Didi, one of our wonderful senior Vaishnavas. You've maybe met her in some of the Zooms. And, we hear this expression that, Kanak, Kamini, and Pratishta. These are kind of like, sorry, I'm getting, when your mind is like just fixed on something. I'm trying to find this question and my mind's like, okay, I'm closing the phone. It's really interesting, seeing these, the mind, it's like a machine, actually. It's like a machine, and it latches onto things, has particular things that like, so you see how like with social media, how addicted, right? Because it's just this play of the mind, right? But anyway, Bimala gave a very beautiful explanation of this. You've probably heard this expression, Kanak, Kamini, and Pratishta. These are described as the three major obstacles on devotion, on the path of devotion. Kanak means wealth. Kamini is referring to sense pleasure, especially between, men and women. And Pratishta means our pride, or honor, more specifically like honor. And so these are described as the three principal obstacles that we will face. However, the solution to overcoming them is by putting them in their proper place, right? So it is said, Kanak, wealth, belongs to Narayan, to Vishnu. And Kamini, pleasure or beautiful women, belongs to Krishna. And Pratishta, honor, that belongs to Guru. And so when these things are properly placed, then there's no problem. There's perfect harmony. Everything's beautiful. These things only become a problem when they're being misused. And so what I really appreciated the way that Bimala was explaining this to someone a few days ago. She was saying, Lakshmi is a goddess, right? And she wants to serve her Lord. She wants to serve Narayan. And so if we are using her for any other purpose, she's not happy. She is a person, and she likes to be used for a particular purpose, to serve her beloved Lord. And so if we are using Lakshmi for anything other than for Narayan's service or Krishna's service, there must be some reaction for that. Then there is some reaction. But if we are using her only for what she wants to be used for, then everything is happy and everything is peaceful. So it is all about the intention. So I would say, if we are using Lakshmi for our selfish purposes, then, Kali is there. Anything that is anything, it's not only money, not only wealth, but anything that's being used for Krishna's service, that is nirguna. That is beyond the gunas, that is beyond any touch of this material plane. And I'm reminded of one comment our Gurudev made in regards to, sometimes our communities, they collect vegetables, right? Or there are different shops who will, I'm getting some weird static. Is that coming from me? I don't know. But sometimes, local shops, they will like to give some donations, boga. Boga literally means, that which is to be enjoyed. So we offer boga to Krishna and he gives us back prasadam. Sometimes I hear devotees saying, we're going to make prasadam. That's not exactly how it works, or we're going to teach people how to make prasadam. I heard this discussion going on a few days ago. That's not exactly how it works. We offer boga to Krishna, and if he is so pleased, he will give us back some prasad. So to say that we will make prasad kind of like undermines the whole idea of what this is about. It's grace. It's like, I'm going to make some grace. Like, that's not how it works. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, so sometimes like local shops, they light, or markets, they give some offerings for the service of the temple, right? Boga. And our Gurudev, he mentions that anything that has been collected, like for the service of the temple, for the service of the deity, so that is nirgun. Now that is of a different, once it has been given for Krishna's service, it's taken on a different quality. It's something else now. And he said that it was nirgun, beyond the gunas, beyond the material modes of nature, free from that. So it is the same with Lakshmi, the same with wealth. If we are using that carefully with intention, for Krishna's service, whether directly or indirectly, you know, because we also have to maintain ourselves, right? You know, it's not that we can artificially jump to some higher plane of faith where we just, you know, live under the sky or under trees, you know. we can if someone can do that in an authentic way, then that's beautiful, you know. But even if you can, it may not be so productive in terms of sharing the message in the current age, you know. You know, nowadays people, you know, they need to see something a little different. So anyway, you know, if we are using what wealth we have directly or indirectly in connection with Krishna's interest, with Guru Hari Guru Vaishnava, then that is of a different quality. You know, then that is nirguna. And we do, you know, I mean, this is actually kind of a big topic. You know, we have to be careful. And we saw, you know, because even so, we saw with our gurus that they were careful. They didn't consider themselves always to be able to digest money that had come from a particularly sinful background, or they would use it in a very particular way. You know, for example, in you know, so that's another point, that we can't, you know, we can't pretend that we're on a higher platform of faith than we really are. You know, like as an extreme example, stealing money for Krishna service, you know, or selling drugs and using the money for Krishna. You know, these kinds of things have gone on. You know, I'm not just pulling this out of my hat. You know, these kind of things have gone on. But our gurus, they're not so happy about that. You know, if someone is on such a high platform of faith, our Gurudev mentioned, they can do anything and everything for Krishna's service, if it's really coming from an authentic place. But if not, then we're dealing with karma. But just as an example of how careful our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, could be in this regard, you know, in Bengal, I don't know if it still goes on, but in the time when I was living there, there was some custom that once a year the local governments, and this is under communist rule, maybe it's something to do with that, but there was some funny custom where once a year the government, they would have all the ponds, like ponds, lakes drained of fish. They would take out the fish, they would sell that fish, and they would give some money back to whoever it was that owns the particular pond. And so, you know, and we, you know, our temple, we also couldn't escape that. You know, I think it must have been something to do with the communist government. And so our temple also, once a year, there were some persons who would come and they would remove the fish from our ponds, and they would give some money to our temple in exchange. And Srila Acharya Maharaj, he told me that Gurudev instructed him, and then that money, Acharya Maharaj was acting as the manager, and Acharya Maharaj said that Gurudev had told him, you keep that money separate. So this is like dirty money. You know, this is coming from the committing violence against other entities, being sold and all these things. So our Gurudev said, you keep that money separate and you must use it directly and only for the deity's service. Don't use it for anything else. You know, like only they can digest that. You know, so we will use that money very carefully. And there were some other, you know, there were some other incidents too. There was one incident that I've heard of. There was another incident involving Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Some money came from some similar type of thing. It was involving on animal slaughter, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he said that money, you know, he would personally, you know, make sure it was spent for the right thing. You know, he was very careful about how that money was used. So, you know, it is something to be conscious about. You know. and anything that we're receiving, then we're also partaking in some of the karma that's attached, right? So, and of course we can't totally avoid it. It's impossible because we're living in the karmic world, but we will try to minimize it. We will try to minimize it, and we will, the money that we're receiving, the money that we're using, like for myself, people give me donations, and I feel a little scared about that, actually. Like if I misuse that, then that karma is coming on me. Like whatever history is behind that money, then that's gonna come on me. So I will be very careful about that, how I will use that. Otherwise, and I mean, I've seen some cases where, I mean, now I'm going into my own speculation, but where I feel like there were practitioners who suffered because they were receiving resources and they weren't necessarily using it, always for the higher cause. Then some reaction must come, some reaction. There's some karmic weight, some karmic baggage there. So we have to be careful about these things. So yes, as far as possible, what money we have, we will, obviously we can't completely give up our need for enjoyment, but we will try to minimize it as far as possible and use our, thank you. There's some noise there. No, we will try to use it for a higher purpose, for the service of Guru and Guranga as far as possible. We may not be able to, give up all chocolate or whatever it may be, coffee or whatever our things are, but we will try to minimize those things and remember what is the real purpose of this. Bimala, the reason that conversation got started, because she's really extreme about this. She won't even pay for water. Like she won't even pay for water. Yeah, a few weeks ago, she joined us in maybe it was Chico or somewhere. Not Chico, it was another place. It was in San Luis Obispo. She joined us, and I remember there was this one afternoon we went out for Harinam, and we had to wait for her for a long time at one point because she needed water. And so she went into Starbucks, right, to fill up her bottle there with some free tap water. But there was like a line, and so she was like, it was like, 15, 20 minutes, and we're all like out there waiting. And if that was me, I would just go and buy a bottle of water, but she won't even do that. Like she's very extreme about that. And I can't, I'm not going to imitate that. I'm not on that level of surrender, but I admire that. I deeply respect that. It's a nice example, nice benchmark, nice example. So, yeah. Well, very nice, nice topic, Sivarupa. Any comments you want to make on that?
Thank you, Vishakha Didi. That was a beautiful explanation. And it does kind of just make it, I understand it a whole lot better now. Because like you say, this topic is so vast. I mean, like if I'm working and who I'm working for and what they're doing, and it goes into like, it can really have a lot of depth. But like you say, you just, with your best intentions, try and do your best, and it just seems to get more and more intricate, as time goes on, in terms of, how difficult it is just to have like some purity, or, just have like a pure path. It's always entangled.
Another thing that came to mind was, Gurudev mentioned how, like, if you're like, say you're receiving some food, right? Then our Gurudev mentioned if you give some money in exchange for that, then that nullifies the karma. Hi, Brajamahini TD. The Chinmoy Prabhu's with us. We have some here's some Brajamahini. Yeah, sure. Our Gurudev, he mentioned, like, for example, if you receive some, like, say, for example, if you go to a restaurant or something, right, then you could get really paranoid, because there, there's also, there's all that consciousness there in the food. And our Gurudev, he made some comment, like, if I think I heard from Janardhan Maharaj, that if you give some money in exchange for that, then that will nullify the karma. To some extent, at least. Completely, I don't know. But there, it's like there's been some exchange there, and so there will be some equilibrium there. And actually, and now you're actually reminding me, this is reminding me now, and I'm thinking this must be the reason. But one thing that I noted when I was living in India, and I never fully understood it, but now I think I've understood it, is I noticed a few times that with, like, vendors, they had this funny thing where if they weren't happy with the amount of money that you were going to give them, then they would just say, oh, I won't take anything then. And then they would start walking away. But they did it in such a way that it was like a threat, And I'm thinking now, because in India, there's this deep rooted understanding about the nature of karma, right? So it's like think about it. Like, if you accept something from someone for freely and you don't give them what they think they deserve, then you're holding that karma, right? You're holding that karma. Because I noticed it on quite a few occasions. It was like a kind of threat, like, oh, I won't take anything. Like, it's on you, it's on you. It's interesting. There's such a deep, they just have this very, like, kind of deep, it's a deep faith, I mean, I appreciate it in one level. They know how the system works. So yeah, so accepting things for free, that's not always such a good idea, right? You're taking on more of that karmic load, and so it's better if there's some exchange, or like equalizing things. You're holding more responsibility, right? If it's a free thing. And that, this also reminds me too of the 6 loving exchanges, right, which are mentioned in Upadeshamrita of Srila Rupa Goswami, the Nectar of Instruction, right? Those are things that you only want to do with, people who you want to have some exchange of consciousness, right? Dadati, pratigranati, guyamakyati, prichati, bhunkte, bhajayate, chaiva, shadvidam, pritilakshanam. Offering gifts, receiving gifts, revealing your mind in confidence, hearing in confidence, offering food, receiving food. These are like all free, loving exchanges, right? And the idea is that in the practice of devotion, we want to try to restrict that only to persons who we have some genuine regard for, because otherwise you're exchanging energy there. If you're giving food, receiving, all of these are like very intimate ways to exchange with someone. So we will try to limit that to persons who, we feel comfortable, having some conscious energy exchange with. Otherwise, we're taking on some baggage there, right? So yeah, a lot of interesting points come up from that. Thank you, Sevarupa. Yeah. Living more consciously, right? That's what is needed. Then ultimately, we can also say we're depending on mercy. We also don't want to get too fanatic about these things, especially in the kind of society we live in. It's kind of difficult. Like in India, there's a very deep understanding of all of these things. And like I heard, like there are all these intricate things, like especially in the taking of food. I've heard in that area, there traditionally there have been a lot of, kind of restrictions around that you only eat with a certain group of persons. So, even Janardhan Maharaj told me how when when he went traveling once with some of the brahmacharis of our mat, and they would only eat food that was cooked, that was prepared by members of our mat, and otherwise they would cook themselves. And in India, like, that's not like a rude thing. That's like normal. Like nowadays, like, if, I go visit someone and they offer me some food, and I say, oh, it's okay, I'll cook for myself. I'll just go in your kitchen, I'll cook. They will be deeply offended, right? That's not going to fly in our modern Western society. But in India, that's part of the culture. Like we hear in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's one instance where Mahaprabhu is traveling in South India, and he comes across this Brahmin, and the only thing we hear about his background, or even his name, we don't hear his name, but he's referred to as the Sanodian Brahmin. And it's a particular class of Brahmins. The social religious system in India is so, complex. Like, it's not just Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. There are so many like subdivisions and some more. You probably know this much better than me. But there are also like many different types of Brahmins, not just Brahmin, there are types of Brahmins. And so that particular type of Brahmin, it's mentioned, like they would normally perform ceremonies, offerings, perform rituals for persons of lower castes. But they would not, for someone of Mahaprabhu's status, who's a sannyasi and a higher level Brahmin, that he wouldn't be considered eligible to even cook for Mahaprabhu. And so they have this meeting, they have this ecstatic meeting in Mathura, and they dance and chant and it's I mean, like, to our ears, it's kind of funny. He invites Mahaprabhu to his home, and he says, your assistant can cook for you there. Like, that's how he invites him. You can come and cook at my house. Like that's his polite invitation. You can come and use my kitchen. Like in our society, it would sound a little rude, but that's considered a polite invitation. Because Mahaprabhu is traveling with this Brahmin companion, Balabhadra Bhattacharya. He says, your servant Balabhadra, he can come and cook for you, and you visit me in my home, and like that. But then Mahaprabhu graces him, and he says, well, Madhavendra Puri, who was Madhavendra Puri, who is Mahaprabhu's Param Guru, Grand Guru, and who was that Brahmin's direct guru, I believe. And there was an occasion when this Brahmin cooked personally for Madhavendra Puri. And so Mahaprabhu said, our guru, he showed the example, and he directly took your cooking. So therefore I will do the same. So I will allow you to cook for me, and so, they do like that. So, there's such a deep awareness of this. It's just kind of part of the fabric of the Indian culture. But in the West, this is not known at all. So what are we going to do? Are we going to be these, fanatic, Brahminical Vaishnavas? We can't do that, so we just have to roll with it, right? And also, one of my friends, Akinshan Maharaj, actually, he made a very good point. Sometimes our devotees, we get kind of very particular about certain points, like more important points, like practicing humility, tolerance, and respect, we may not take very seriously. But then there would be like some particular technical things, so like, for example, Thursday afternoon, Barbella, right? It's considered somewhat inauspicious, and it's advised not to go out at that time, to plan anything for that time. And sometimes our devotees are very particular about that. And, I'm not saying it's not a good thing to observe. Of course, service necessity overrides everything. But I appreciated one point Akinsha Maharaj made. He said, we're coming from such contaminated backgrounds. Like in the big picture, like, does it really make much of a difference? Like like this, these are really for persons who are living at a much higher standard of purity. Like it's a very subtle plane to be living in. Like we saw with our Gurudev, you know, Chinmoy Prabhu knows very well, like he wouldn't go out the door without consulting his Panjaka, like checking when's an auspicious time to go out, when's an auspicious time to do this. Like he was very, and you know, he was a real Brahmin, a real spiritual Brahmin, Nirguna. There's a name for it, Nirguna Brahmin. There's another name for it, but anyway, like that, you know. So our Gurudev, because he's living on such a subtle platform, all of these things are very meaningful to him. But for us, you know, that, you know, we're much more mixed up, you know, and may not affect us that much, you know, because we're already at a certain level of impurity, you know. So, you know, sometimes we're going out and we have to mix with people in particular ways, which may not be, you know, the best, but out of necessity for harmony, social harmony, you know, we're doing that, you know. And ultimately, you know, we're depending on grace, you know, we're depending on mercy. And our Gurudev, he would kind of like, you know, half jokingly mention, like, you know, the Westerners, they are all qualified for Ragamarg, you know, because, you know, the spontaneous practice of devotion, because we're not qualified for anything else, you know. We can't follow Vidhi Marg, the regulated practice anyway, so. So, and you know, karma, you know, that the whole karmic world, it's always going to be playing on in the background, at least at our current stage, and we just, you know we're not going to be free of it, and we can't get too stuck on calculating our karmic load, right? but we're trying to just focus on what are we doing for the higher side, what are we doing for Gurudev, what are we doing for Mahaprabhu, the Vaishnavas, and focus on that, you know, because also it can turn into a type of calculative devotion, mood of devotion, if there's too much calculation of these things, you know. Ultimately the Vaishnava, they don't care what their karma is, right? You know, let me face whatever karma I have to face, you know, but if I can always remember the Lord, the Vaishnavas, I'm happy, you know. So this is something that's very sweet about Vaishnavism. There's this simplicity, right? There's this sweet simplicity that is there. Let it all play on in the background. It's just background noise, you know. Whatever I'm doing that is incurring karma, let it go on, you know. That's what is deserving, what I'm deserving of. It is to purify me. But let me keep my main focus on this higher cultivation, on the mood of offering, devotion, surrender, sharanagati. And these karmic things that we face, they can also be very sobering, right? And drive us to deeper levels of surrender. Gurudev mentions that point in Revealed Truth, you know, like what he says, when the jiva souls see how, you know, their material activity is bringing about negative reactions, it can be very helpful, you know, for the spiritual life. You know, it's giving us some sobriety. You know, what are the consequences? You know, what are the consequences? And then it, you know, it's like someone may have a glamour, you know, like for example, let's say in taking drugs, right? There's this kind of glamour, right, that surrounds it, you know, on some level. But then you look on like the other ends, like so many health problems and, you know, and mental problems, physical problems that come out of that. It doesn't look so glamour, like smoking. There's something about smoking cigarettes that just looks cool. That gives you lung cancer, man. Like, that's not cool. So it's something that always strikes me, actually, how there's this kind of glamorous veneer over many things in the material world. And you look on the backside what's going on. It's not so pretty there. I remember a few years ago, I was walking through Rome. It was with Chaitanya Mai, actually, in Rome. And we walked down this one street, and there were all these kind of like, in Rome, you know, it's a very, you know, sophisticated, classy place, and many beautiful streets and shops. And there was one street we walked down, and there were a whole bunch of these very attractive restaurants, like fancy looking, well designed restaurants. And you know, and there's food, nice Italian food, pizza and pasta and all these things. And so we walked down this one side and we visited one park, and then later we walked back, and we actually, interestingly, somehow the route that we took, it was walking down the back of that street. The same street, but on the other side. And there's all like these piles of stinking garbage on the other side. And it's like dark, and, you know, not many people around, and probably a lot of, I didn't look too close, probably the rats and cockroaches and all these things. And I was like, wow, like it's all just exposed, you know, that glamorous cover, it's all just exposed, and you see the other side, you know. So that is the nature of material life. It's mentioned also in Bhagavad Gita in regards to sattva, rajas, and tamas, that what is sattvic, of the nature of goodness. In the beginning, it may be a little painful, you know, it may be a little bitter, but the end product is something wholesome, bright, beautiful, good, you know. But the opposite, other end of the spectrum, in the those things connected with the mode of ignorance, you know, or passion. In the beginning, they may appear, you know, very attractive and enjoyable and bright, you know, but in the end, then you face the reactions, you know, then you face the consequences. So it is like that, you know. So, then I remember now, the question was from one of our Polish friends about if there's a relationship between Radharani and Maya. Let me see here. Here it is. Is Maya Devi somehow Radharani? Well, you know, it's not exactly a connection that we like to draw, but there is some connection there, right? Because, you know, Yoga Maya is the spiritual deluding potency, and, you know, she is one type of expansion coming from Radharani. And then Mahamaya is one expansion coming from Yoga Maya. So, you know, but, you know, this, you know, there are many intricate lines here, you know, there are many intricate lines here. But yes, I mean, simply put, there is some connection there. It is true. No, and actually now I was trying to remember where, and now I'm remembering, I think it's in Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. Maybe Chinmoy or Govindandini or someone else remembers better, but there's one place actually where this is discussed. Maybe I'll try and find it for next week, but there's some discussion at this point, actually. I think, as I recall, there's some reassurance being given, because sometimes we hear how Maya Devi, she feels a little ashamed, right? Because she's kind of like doing the dirty work, right? You know, she's like quality control, you know, as one of our friends mentioned it. She's like testing jivas, you know. But, you know, it's not the most pleasant thing to do. Tempting persons away from Krishna, right? To test them. So we hear sometimes occasions when she's expressing some remorse or some shame, or she's ashamed to come before the Lord, you know. Of course, ultimately, she is, as our Gurudev said, she's a Param Vaishnavi, you know, she is a great devotee of the Lord, and she's doing her service. So, but nevertheless, sometimes she feels some shyness about what type of service she does. And so, as I recall, I believe it's in Navadvita Mahatmya, there's some reassurance being given to her. And one of the points mentioned is like, you know, in this higher aspect, you know, you are doing this higher service in the spiritual world, you know, ultimately your source is there. You know? So, see, originally there is Radha and Krishna, right? Supreme Shakti Mam. And then everything is expanding from there. Everything is coming out from there, and those sides. So I think that's all I really can say about that. I don't know if anyone else wants to make any comment. Chinmoy or Govinda.
I heard Shirmar speak a little bit about this, because there was some comment that Durga Didi made, like I am Radharani or something like that, and what he was saying is that you need to trace the potency. Where is that coming from? And ultimately, it all comes from Radharani. So they can say they have that connection, they have that potency in them.
Oh, thank you, Chinmoy Prabhu. That's very, very helpful. Any other comments from anyone or question, topic? And welcome to Jayadev. Jayadev has also joined us. Rasaraj Prabhu, any well, you've got your camera off, but you always have something insightful to share. Anything you want to share with our group today? Anything at all?
Well, I was reading from Srimad Bhagavatam a few days ago that one of the verses is about that in Kali Yuga, they say that the sinful activities, they are not performed, only in the mind, they are not count. But a good thinking or good behavior is counted. But I remember that Srila Guru Maharaj said about Vaishnava aparad, like offenses to the Vaishnavas, it's not the same. It's like a different. So it's possible that this Vaishnava offenses can be in the mind also, can be counted. If that's how we should believe in that is like this.
Yes, I heard Gurudev say that. Yes, but firstly, I just want to mention I saw that you posted that on Facebook actually, and I really appreciated that he Prabhu posted this quote from Bhagavatam and some purport by Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, and I'd heard before that. I think it's fairly well known that in Kali Yuga, there's because normally in previous ages, sin, even committed mentally, you have to suffer for. But in Kali Yuga, it's like a special dispensation because our minds are so uncontrolled, you know, that we won't, you know, we get some like kind of like grace card for that, you know, it won't be counted. But I hadn't heard that other point. That was very interesting, that pious activity performed in the mind, that does count. I believe that's what it said in the quote of Srila Prabhupada there, that that pious activity performed mentally, it will be, you will get some, you know, benefit for that, you know. Of course, this is a, you know, more of a karmic thing, so we're not very focused on that, but it's an interesting, encouraging point. But then going more specifically to your question, yes, I saw that directly. Srila Gurudev said that. Maybe it was in a letter, but I think it's published in one of our books. Our Gurudev said that yes, it is true that sin committed in the mind is not counted. And he said, but Vaishnava aparad is different, because that is connected to the soul plane, to the Atma. The other thing, like sin is kind of happening on a superficial level. Sin is happening on the covering, right? The whole karma, the play of karma is happening on the covering, on the superficial layer of things. But Vaishnava aparad, that will affect our soul, because the Vaishnava is connected to the nirguna plane, to the eternal plane. And so that penetrates on a deeper level. And so we have to be very careful for that. Even mentally, it is not excusable. And another point is that, what we're cultivating mentally, that tends to come out, right? In some, physically or verbally, right? If we're thinking in a particular way, then at a certain point, it will start to express itself, right? Like what's playing in our mind is often like a seed, right? And then that, if we're like feeding that seed, then it will start to grow, and then it will start to express itself in our actions or words or behavior, right? So that's another point too. That it's mentioned actually in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this concept of the seed of offense against the Vaishnava. It may start out as something small, but if we're feeding it, then it will grow into something more. So yeah, as soon as we see that something is growing in us, then we will nip it in the bud, as they say in English, nip it in the bud. Like as soon as it starts, cut it out. Don't let it go any further. And another point is that Srila Sridhar Maharaj has and our Gurudev has indicated this, that if we've committed some, I believe in one talk I heard Gurudev directly say it, but it's also been implied in certain circumstances that according to the nature, according to how an offense was expressed against a Vaishnava, we should remedy it accordingly. So for example, if the offense was in writing, then we should correct it in writing. If it was a public announcement, it should be corrected publicly. Verbally, then also in the mind, we can correct ourselves in the mind if we committed it in the mind. So, and change our behavior and our view of that Vaishnava. So yes, we must be very careful. It's really something we have to be very careful of. Because as our Gurudev used to say, we don't know who is a Vaishnava. We don't know who is a Vaishnava. And Vaishnavas may have a lot of karmic coverings, right? Karmic layers. And that may make it difficult for us to see that gold within them. So we may get disturbed by some particular anartha, some particular faults that a Vaishnava has, and we forget that they're a Vaishnava. We forget that Vaishnava quality. They may have disturbed us in some way, but they still have that relationship with the Lord, with Guru, with the Vaishnavas, and that has to be honored. So we have to be very, very careful and do whatever it takes to avoid that. We don't want to see the Vaishnavas in a material way. Martya buddhi is this material consciousness. We want to avoid that at all costs. Our Gurudev used to say, I'm only afraid of one thing, that is Vaishnava aparad. And he said, and even if I see some very like small, small point of Vaishnavata in someone, then I'm careful with them. Even if it's just some small thing that they have, 1%, still, that is something, right? So we must be very, very careful. Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about recently, especially when we're interacting more closely with the devotees. It can become more challenging. So we have to find that point of adjustment where we can maintain our appreciation for the Vaishnavas and avoid the critical view of them. Well, thank you, Rasaraj Prabhu, for bringing that up. Well, we still have a few more minutes. Anyone else want to bring anything up? It's winter in Brazil. Govinda and Jeannie's all wrapped up. Well, we've been having some very nice programs here in Austin, Texas. We just had a weekend camp out, and we had maybe like a dozen people come and stay for the weekend, and it was very nice. It was very, very, very positive. Yeah. Lots of kirtan and and many, it was funny though, because I was thinking to tell Chinmoy, because Chinmoy is often involved with planning things. It was funny because we worked out this wonderful schedule, and very a tight schedule, with activity, workshops and talks and classes and a lot of the time they just wanted to kind of chill. Right. I think I had one class where almost everyone was there, but otherwise, everyone, they're just it's kind of they join one kirtan and that's enough, they're very full with that. They're very full with that, and just connecting with the community, connecting with the land here, and it's that's already a lot for them. So, but very, very nice people. And now we have the Govinda Mela, another festival happening at our Soquel ashram in California, which everyone is invited to.
I'm going, yay.
Jay.
You are too?
Oh,
I'll be there for part of it. Yeah. And I told Jai David also to take some time off of work so he can be there, that Srila Janardhan Maharaj requests that he comes as soon as possible.
And Chaitanya Daya is coming. Rasaraj Prabhu, will anyone be coming from New York, do you think? Or New Jersey?
Not sure.
Okay.
I didn't hear about anybody going to the Govinda Mela.
I remember one year Nata Bandhu Prabhu came, but maybe he won't make it this year. I know his health has not been so good, and it's expensive too. Okay. Well, we'll be thinking of all of you. Okay, well, I guess we can close. Any final words from Chin? Oh, do you want to say something, Chintamani?
Yeah, I was just gonna say about in my experience of sharing bhakti yoga with the newcomers, and I had a really deep talks. I've had a lot of deep talks with Srila Keshav Maharaj, Bhakti Sri Keshav Maharaj, about sharing with newcomers and how to read the room and understand where these people are at. And one of my deepest reflections I've had is overwhelm that most people are dealing with, that are coming out of they're coming into Vaishnava association. They are dealing with crazy levels of overwhelm that we can't even relate to at this stage of our bhakti. That they're over the littlest things. Just a sentence will be life-changing. The energy work that happens in the assembly of the Vaishnavas is a lot, and people need to like, in order for it to really settle in, I find that, you know, less is more in that, because a lot of people, I've experienced that when they get too much information overwhelmed and they run away, that like to do it kind of less is more program is actually, I found, more effective for the long term, because we're in this for life. We're going for the whole 108, all chips in Krishna consciousness. We want it to be, you know, the newcomers are the most important people in our movement, right? To carry the message. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Chintamani. And absolutely, I agree with that. Less is more. That's my motto too. We had one, there was one girl who came and she would like just cry, like in every kirtan, like she was just connecting with the vibration, you know, like just that was like enough. Like she was feeling this higher vibration, and that was life-changing for her, you know? So yeah, it's always an important point to remember. Absolutely.
I find like a newcomer sometimes at a temple, and they'll be like deer in headlights, and some senior Vaishnav just like going on a diatribe about the whole Siddhanta. I'm like, Prabhu, hold please, hold the phone, shut the front door. How about, hi, how are you? Where are you from? What do you like to do in your free time? Like, you know, that these are the kinds of questions that are more important than sharing the whole kit and caboodle of Bhakti Yoga, you know?
Well, that reminds me, actually, Lynn here, I believe, is fairly new to all of this. I hope today's session hasn't been too much or too over your head. And maybe another day when you're not busy, we can connect with you more. And we have a meeting on Thursdays, which is hosted by Chintamani and Gangalila, which is especially for newcomers. So you are more than welcome to join us for that as well.
Thank you. Is it also at 10 o'clock in the morning?
It is, that's right. Yeah.
Okay,
is.
I will definitely be there before I have to get to work. But thank you so much for having me. I'm still driving, but I was listening the entire time, and it was wonderful.
Okay. Well, very happy to hear that.
My son is here right now. Vishakha,
Hi.
Sailor, my
Hi.
son. We are going out for some breakfast or a brunch today.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What's his name again? I forgot.
What is your name again?
Sailor.
Oh, I forgot your name. Your mother told me, but I forgot.
It's like Taylor. It's Sailor.
Sailor. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard a lot of good things about you, Sailor, and happy to see you virtually in person.
Yeah. Likewise.
Okay. Well, have a great breakfast.
You too.
Okay. Well, my humble pranam to all of you. I'm wishing you a spiritually nourishing week ahead, and look forward to next week. I think I'll be in our SoCal Seva Ashram. I'm traveling this Thursday to California, so I'll meet with you all from there next Tuesday. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. All the assembled Vaishnavas, sincere seekers ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Jai Gaur Premanande.